With a quarter of the world's population, robust economic growth, and a burgeoning middle-class consumer market, China is a region of great opportunity for all types of companies.
Many American companies, including small and medium-sized companies, are doing very well in their exports to China.
Our goal here in Beijing is to help U.S. companies sell their products in China.
What are the junctures in the value chain that are critical for you to control? Control those points and don't try to control others.
GMP made a decision to become a global business. Key part of that decision was to enter the China marketplace.
But what does it take to succeed in the rapidly changing China market? What are the risks, and how do you mitigate them? How should you export to China? These are the key questions we'll explore during the next few minutes. First, let's set the stage. China is now sucking in goods and services from the U.S., and many of these goods and services are made by U.S. small and medium-sized companies. This trend, says Craig Allen, our Senior Commercial Service Officer in Beijing, will continue.
China will continue to grow very rapidly for the next several years. China is not only a market for large American companies, for the multinational firms. China is also an excellent market for many smaller American companies. As many as 83% of the companies, American companies, exporting to China are small and medium-sized enterprises, exporting in a very wide variety of goods, from the highly technical and high-tech areas to consumer goods and industrial goods. A very large variety of companies are successfully exporting, and nearly in all categories of our exports, we're seeing double-digit growth for the last several years. And we expect that to continue for the next few years.
And what are the Chinese buyers likely to purchase? In a word, more. More of everything.
Let me give you a couple of examples in areas where we can expect very rapid growth. For example, China has more cellular telephone users than any other country in the world. In fact, the world's two largest cellular telephone companies are both Chinese. China uses more steel, more tobacco, more cement, more corn, more soybeans, and eats more meat and fish, drinks more beer than any other country in the world. And we should expect, along with rising incomes in China, further propensity to consume and more imports coming into many different sectors. A wide variety of industries are more and more open to American competitors, and we should expect American competitors to do very well in many of those industries. In many other industries, in the manufacturing sector, for example, capital goods, there very likely is a strong demand in China. In the consumer goods industries, you probably have to look a little bit harder. But in the urban areas, in the wealthy urban areas of Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, it is very likely that American consumer goods and fashion and American style, American lifestyle type of products can do very well in these markets. That's not to say that this is without risk or without problems.
It's been said many times that China is not a market for the faint-hearted. Craig Allen summarizes some of the obstacles facing U.S. businesses in China.
The first one is intellectual property rights. You must guard your intellectual property. A second problem is the lack of transparency. Oftentimes the laws and the regulations governing your business will change suddenly. A third problem is due diligence. Oftentimes it's difficult to get information on potential Chinese partners. A fourth problem is standards. Oftentimes Chinese standards are different from global or American standards, and you need to make sure that your product is compatible with local standards. Another problem is simply very fierce competition. There are many Chinese competitors and foreign competitors who are duking it out in this market, and particularly price competition is a constant headache for many American companies.
The U.S. Commercial Service helps U.S. companies overcome these hurdles and can soften the rough edges of doing business in China. Here is Cameron Worker, our commercial officer in Beijing, to discuss one of the best opportunities in China, the high-tech sector.
The high-tech sector is one which you need to approach with enthusiasm as well as a little bit of skepticism. There are several issues now in China that high-tech companies need to be aware of. Those include intellectual property rights, standards, and probably most important, finding the most qualified partner to help you do business in China. Let me start with intellectual property rights. There is a saying in China, an unfortunate saying, but it goes that if it can be stolen, it will be stolen. That is not as dire as it sounds, but it is something that you need to be aware of and take precautions to protect yourself. We here at the Commercial Service have a very useful resource and that we call the Ipr Toolkit, which can be found on our website. And it's a guide to help you navigate the pitfalls of IPR in China. It will teach you and show you how to register your trademarks, your patent, your copyright. It will also walk you through how to go through that process, what is the best ways to protect your IPR. Once you have your IPR protected and are ready to do business in China, one of the other issues that is becoming more and more prevalent in doing business in China are the establishment of standards, whether they be Chinese standards developed to meet international standards or Chinese standards that the Chinese are trying to basically force upon the market and have companies doing business in China adopt those standards. Although not a very sexy issue, this is one of extreme importance to companies trying to do business in China because it goes to the heart of how you produce, create, or manufacture your product. In the IT sector, for example, software. Standards could be developed in terms of how the encryption portion of the software is developed. If you don't meet those standards, then you would actually be banned or prohibited from selling the product in China. For other hardware equipment, there have been several high visibility cases recently. One that comes to mind is the wireless LAN standard called WAPI. Had that standard been implemented effectively, it would have banned all encrypted wireless LAN product from entering China had it not met that Chinese standard. So these are some issues that you need to be acutely aware of before you even begin doing business in China. Assess what your intellectual property position is. What is your risk assessment of your intellectual property? Then evaluate the standard situation. Once you have a good idea of where you are, what your market entry strategy is, then you're probably looking at how am I going to find the best partner for doing business in China. This is without a doubt one of the most critical elements of successfully doing business in China. In the IT field, we often hear companies come in complaining that, are there really companies making money in China? Yes, there are. And in the IT field, those companies typically have one or two of the following three characteristics. Companies, IT companies specifically, that find success in China are those companies that are able to tap into a niche market. Their product serves a client base that no other product is serving at the time. Easier said than done, I know, but there are a lot of technologies in the United States that are maybe mundane or run-of-the-mill, maybe even a little old, but they are new to certain areas of China, and that could be your niche market. Second is a rapidly evolving technology. This goes back to the intellectual property right issue that we just discussed. And that is, as technology evolves, it actually prevents the pirates from copying your product. By the time they've done the copying, you've already moved on to the next stage of your technology. Those companies that have a rapidly evolving technology seem to find success in China. A, they avoid the IPR issues, but B, they're also tapping into a very technology-hungry consumer base. And that leads to the third point, is that is top-level technology. I think there's a misconception in China that they are looking for second-hand computers. That just absolutely is not true. The Chinese consumer base that actually has the means to purchase product, not just the desire, but has the means to purchase product, are really after state-of-the-art